Hello. Hello, I'm Dr. John Harding. I'd like to welcome you to our 6th program in this parent education series, Raising Children with God. We have a very interesting topic tonight, and we have some very interesting guests tonight who I'm delighted to have. We're going to talk about infants' first year and its survival tips for parents, how to survive this parenting experience of the infant through the first year. We have Fane and David Sullivan with us tonight, and they're parents of 7 children. And they didn't, maybe they did it the easy way or maybe the hard way, I don't know, but it wasn't all like just individual babies. There was a little girl born first, and then there were triplets, and then there was another little girl, and then there were twins to finish, to round out the 7. We're going to talk about some things tonight. The first shows we've done have been before baby was born. We did the nursery, the first few days of the baby's life, and then the first month home, and then the last 2 programs were on infant nutrition in the first year. And tonight we're going to try to take a practical approach to, my credentials are not very good compared to the Sullivans. We only have 4 children, and it was further ago, so my memory may be a little fuzzy. But what we learned as parents, my wife and I've been practicing pediatrics for 23 years, what I've learned in that practice experience. Fane and David have raised 7 children, and if young parents who are just taking their first baby home and they're about to face this parenting experience for the first time, for the first year, I think if they think that that's a difficult task to face, imagine when you took the 3 home. You did have the experience of having gone through it once with 1, but still, that was a job to face. And we're going to share tonight what we've learned. And some of the things that we'll try to talk about are things that I feel are highlights or important things. And I think one is scheduling. I think the babies are scheduled in the hospital. They're basically on a 3 or 4 hour feeding schedule. But one thing they're scheduled to think is that there's no day and night. The hospital lights are on in that nursery 24 hours a day. And I think sometimes the babies go home and they don't have a clue what is day and what is night. Most parents have come out of a schedule before they went into the hospital of sleeping at night and being awake during the day. And I think that's one schedule that I try to help parents to resolve so that right from the beginning we start to work on trying to get baby to sleep through the night, or to at least have their longest sleep at night, and to be more wakeful and to eat more and to be more active during the day. And I'll be very interested to hear your comments on how do we get these little boys and girls to sleep a little bit at night. And we'll talk about eating, and again the feeding schedule. And as we go through the first year, you know, their diet in the beginning, and their diet in the middle, and their diet at the end. And we'll talk about the economics of parenting an infant through the first year of life, and the cost of formula, or the cost of diapers, the cost of the solid foods when we get into them, the cost of their medical care and their clothing. And then a few of the common problems, and thinking about this program tonight, just several common things came to mind, and we'll try to talk a little bit about diaper rashes and teething, maybe baby's first cold, the bowels too good, frequent and loose, or actually diarrhea, which is an illness, constipation, which is not good or frequent enough, and what to do. Safety in the first year, and I think a lot of times we, as parents, don't appreciate the importance of safety. We think of that more as maybe when they're toddlers, when they're running around the place, or when they're children and riding bicycles and playing sports, that's when they're more at risk. But the babies do have risks in that first year, and we'll talk a little bit about safety, safe-proofing a home or a room. And I'm anxious to hear what these two have to say tonight, so and we're going to be very privileged to have a little walk through a family album here tonight, too. So we'll try to be Sir Walter Raleigh tonight, and we'll let Fane maybe start first. And maybe Fane, who I'll just say a little bit. I hope they won't be embarrassed now when I say that, and I've just learned this because I talked a little bit to Fane about this, and maybe David doesn't even know what we're going to say here, but they met about 14 years ago, and Fane was a lifeguard in a park, and Dave was a recreational director, and that was in June about 14 years ago, the 14th anniversary coming up now. And their best credentials really are their 7 children. David manages a postal facility, and Fane is an RN, and her major job is at home. She does work 1 day a week in an obstetrician gynecologist's office. And I've just come to know their children in the past few years. There's another pediatrician taking care of them, so I'm going to be anxious to hear some of what they have to say, because I came in late. I've known the twins, and I've known their children a little bit as they're older. But maybe, Fane, you could start off and walk us through the album a little bit, or maybe talk at the beginning about scheduling, and David chip in, and we'll just go back and forth a bit.
This is a picture that was taken at Memorial Hospital, and this is when we were going home, and they were born August 17th of 1990. And I'm holding one of the twins, and David's holding one of the twins. And on the bed, from oldest to youngest, is Erin, who is 10. And, of course, she wasn't 10 then. Now she was 8.5. And the triplets were 6.5. This is Kerry, Ryan, and Sean. And then Tara was only 2.5. And this was taken by the TNG on our way home. It was in the paper. This one is just a current picture that we used for Christmas. We had it taken at Kinderphoto, and we had to get a special appointment to get 7 children in, because they only limit it to 4. So we had to get all 7 and squeeze them into a certain backdrop. And again, here is Erin, is the oldest, and the triplets are in the back, and Tara, and the twins. So this is the most current picture.
Having 7 children might be a little bit like being a Robert Parrish and trying to get a car that fits, or a mirror on the wall that's the right height. There's a little difference there, I would guess.
Well, we just went into a 15-passenger van. We had a Voyager, and it didn't fit any longer, so we decided to buy a bigger one. And now we have enough room for everybody in the neighborhood, kids too.
As well.
Yeah.
That's, you know, I don't think you would think of that, the differences of having a large family, but
they usually have a
15-passenger
friend or
van.
another, you know, that comes along, or we carpool. So in the Voyager, it was a 7-passenger. We were already squeezing 9 into it, so we did need a bigger car for safety alone, you know, just so they would each have their own seatbelt, you know, because the car seats take up quite a bit of space.
That's right.
So this is just some individual pictures of each of the children. This is Erin when she was a year. And these are the triplets. You might want to hold one and we can put it across. This was Kerry, Ryan, and Sean, just a bit back a little bit. And that was at 4 months of age. And then
They're looking very well fed and prosperous there, the trio.
And they were preemies, so actually they were very well fed by the time they were 4 months, because
they're
they started
4
out
months
as
there.
4 or 5 pounds, the
Their
triplets
birth
did.
weights. And at that stage, what do they weigh about?
Oh, they were 10 pounds
months, yeah,
before
they-
3 months, because
yeah.
once they hit 3, Dr. Ossie used to say when they hit 10 pounds, you know, they would sleep through the night, and it was always true. Once they hit the 10 pounds, right before they turned 3 months, maybe 2 months,
Yeah.
they
Well,
slept
it
through
took
the
us a
night.
little longer with the triplets, I think, because of their birth weights.
No, but by 3 months they were sleeping
Yeah.
through the night. And then these are the other singles. This is Tara, the other single, and these are the twins at a year.
Now, if you were about to have your first baby come home from the hospital, and what would you do in terms of trying to set up a little bit of a schedule for the first few days, the first weeks, the first few nights, in terms of helping each other, and in terms of what would your plan be? What would your game plan be? Or what would you tell young parents to
Our plan
set
was
about
always
to do?
just to follow what the nurses suggested, was to keep them on the schedule that they already had them on, and it did work. They said not to feed them before the 3 or 4 hours. If they got up, you know, you could give them a little bit of water, but nothing. We didn't even use sugar water because we felt that then they wouldn't be hungry for the feeding. So we would either put them in the swing or take them for a walk or distract them a little bit, but hold them off that 3 or 4 hours, because then they did take more at that feeding. And then they would sleep, and at the next feeding, you know, again, we would wait the 3 or 4 hours. During the day, we would wake them up every 3 or 4 hours if they didn't wake up. And then at night, we would let them see how long of a stretch they could go.
right from the beginning?
Right.
I think sometimes with one, you could be a little more open, and you have more time, and it isn't as important. But babies do often seem to really thrive on a schedule. And I think, you know, you discovered that. And once you discovered it, you did that for all of your children. And I think that's important to start out with that thought, to keep them on a rough schedule. I think for sure a schedule of 2 to 4 hours for feeding. I think there will be infants that, you know, just for one reason or another have a small stomach or they have a small appetite and they just won't take enough. But the majority, and we're aiming at the majority, the average normal baby, I would agree. I think a schedule does seem to agree with them, gets them off to the right start.
We also found that we didn't really adapt our schedule to the baby. The baby almost adapted its schedule to ours because we never stayed home. If we were going out, we went out. We took the baby with us. And if it ended up being 3 hours, well, we were on the go for 3 hours. So it wasn't a matter of sitting around the house waiting for the baby to wake up. Take the baby with us.
And then they learned to sleep in the car seats, or they didn't only learn to sleep in their crib. My mother had had a stroke when I had Erin, my oldest, when I was pregnant. So she was in a rehab facility. So Erin, for the first 3 months, went daily and would sleep in the available bed that was next to my mother's. And we were there all day doing exercises, and she just adapted to the whole thing and never once
The
missed
babies
out on
are
it.
very adaptable, I think, and they, but they can get into a habit or a mode very easily. I think a mistake a lot of times with the first baby and parents for the first time will sort of give up everything else and totally zero in on that baby. And they really do spoil the baby a bit. It's good to spoil them. You want to see them loved as much as possible. But if the babies get used to having everything perfectly their own way, instantly, perfect quiet, you know, instant gratification, I think they can learn impatience, and I think they can learn to prefer quiet, and then if a little noise comes on the scene, they get all bent out of shape. Whereas like what you did, you went about your business and they adapted to it, and they got used to different noises, different atmosphere, a little bit different motions and everything else. And I think then they're a little bit more flexible and they're a little bit more open to change, and they don't get all bent out of shape. Right. And that's important.
So we had friends that would have a sign on the doorbell, you know, please do not ring because the doorbell might wake them up. Or ours would just fall asleep in the swings with the TV going, and they just got used to the noise so that they would sleep wherever.
I think it's very hard with your first baby. I think you learned a little bit as you went, and I think we've learned. But I think young parents can learn a lot from others' experience, and I just don't see why everyone should have to learn the hard way. Why not learn from other people's experience, people with more experience? What about the feeding now? Did you formula feed, or did you breastfeed any of the infants? Or?
I only tried to breastfeed. I had no intention of breastfeeding the triplets. I didn't have any
Good
desire.
good common sense. I have seen twins breastfed, and I
my
think
first
that's
did
possible,
fine just on the formula, so that was my theory. And she had no allergies, and actually none of the children have any allergies. But I did try to breastfeed one, and I had taken a course on it and thought I knew how to do it, but I didn't enjoy it. And I did it for about 3 days and ended up with blisters, and maybe I didn't position her right, but I absolutely, you know, didn't even enjoy the feeding. When they brought the baby in, I thought, I have to feed this baby. So I thought I should switch to the formula because my others did so well, and I enjoyed it much more.
I think it's important to retain some common sense. I think in general everyone will cast their first vote for breastfeeding. That gets the #1 vote. But I think that sometimes it doesn't work out. I've seen all kinds of reasons why it didn't work out. Formulas are very good. I don't